news. Tickets for the Conference on Religious Trauma, Court 2023, are now available. Also, if you're interested in an ad-free version of the Divorcing Religion podcast, come join me over on Patreon. Links for both are in the show notes. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious recovery consultant. My guest today is Ryan Hernandez. Ryan is a survivor of an end times cult that claimed to be Catholic. Escaping the cult was terrifying, but also trying to live a normal life seemed impossible due to years of paranoia and abuse. Now, Ryan is using his voice to bring awareness about recovering one's life after leaving a cult by hosting the Truth That Heals podcast. Welcome, Ryan. It's nice to get to meet you.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here.
Oh, good. We connected on Twitter, I think, and yes. I was really curious about your story and the work that you're doing now with your podcast. So I wonder if you would take us back to the beginning, so to speak. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what your family was like, if there was any religion or kind of cultic influences in that environment.
Well, my upbringing was, I started off in Los Angeles. That's where I was born. I'm from Bellflower. It's closer to like the Long Beach area. And growing up in LA, my parents were from El Salvador. It's a country in Central America. So they worked their butts off, and then they were able to come to the United States and, start up a new life in beautiful Los Angeles. And they brought their Catholic faith. And so there's three of us. I'm the youngest child. My two older brothers, they grew up also in LA, and we were always very influenced by our Catholic as well as our El Salvadorian California upbringing. So that was always something that we cherished. And me personally, I saw that Catholicism, it wasn't culty. I know that there are many people who do find religion to be culty. For me, in my upbringing, it was just something that was there, something that we had devotion to, we had our prayers, but it wasn't something that it was measured, because in cults it's like you have to do this, you have to do that. If not, there's punishment. It was more a you have free will. My parents was like, we're giving you the teaching, but hey, once you get older, this is up to you how you want to live your life. So it was very free, and I enjoyed my faith. So growing up in LA, I would go to downtown. We do like soup kitchens, and I didn't care if the people weren't Catholic or they were atheists. And we'd feed the homeless, and we'd give clothing. So I always had this drive, not just for religion, but just to connect with people. And it didn't matter whether they had a faith or not. And so I liked that. However, growing up in LA, there was a movement which claimed to be Catholic. They still claim to be Catholic. And it's kind of a slippery slope, because, in hindsight, I'm seeing things that they did which were not in accordance with Catholicism or regulations. So anyways, I'm getting so ahead of myself. This group, founded by a priest, his name is Father Bing Arellano, and the name of the movement is Alliance of the Holy Family International. So they come to LA and they promote themselves as this group that is simply pretty much trying to help people how to pray. Where they're not targeting like atheists, or they're not going door to door like Jehovah's Witnesses. They're just helping Catholics to, once again, learn how to pray or pray with them. So I kind of like that. Or, pray with the youth. And I like that. It wasn't anything forced. However, behind all of that was a deception, because although they claimed to be Catholic and that they were doing things, out of love, what I later found out years later was that they had been kicked out of Los Angeles, but they were still doing things behind the backs of the bishops. The problem was, as a young Catholic, as someone who loved my faith and loved my culture, I was thinking about maybe becoming a priest. However, I was thinking, maybe I can do that later. Right now, I want to focus on my studies. But this priest, or quote unquote priest, he would give these amazing talks. And I say amazing because at the time, as a listener, we're just so amazed by the charisma, by the strength of his voice. And it became so hypnotic. But also, it was clothed with this fear that if you don't follow him, if you don't follow his movement, that, destruction is going to happen, or you're not going to be holy enough. And then there became this like us versus them, where it's like his group was the best group in the Catholic Church and like the only group, and that the rest were all like weak or not holy enough. So I had the mindset of maybe when I get older, finish high school, go to college, and then maybe if I want to be a priest and do some kind of ministry, then maybe I'll do that. But at that time I was 16, just about to turn 17, and now the vision that I have is I need to join this priest. I need to join Father Bing, because if I don't follow him, then I might not make it to heaven. Or because that's how they lure you in.
Oh, and were you telling your parents? Did your family know about this person and the teachings and how gripped you had become by his teachings?
Well, the Alliance of the Holy Family, that's the name of the movement, it comes off as like we're just another Catholic movement. But once you get in and are more involved, and I was a little bit more involved, you start seeing that there's a hidden agenda. So although they're like in the public, hey, we want everyone to, work together. Once you're inside, it's like, no, it's just for us. So what I'm trying to say is that as an outsider, starting to look in, I didn't know the whole picture. The way it appears is that this group is just the holy group. And like I mentioned, they did get kicked out, but then they would twist it. The way they twist it is to show the followers, look, the bishop here has kicked us out. That's the start of the persecution. See, we're giving these holy gospel, holy messages, and who's the one who's trying to destroy it? It's not really the bishop. It's actually the devil. So for my parents, and myself, we saw this as just another religious group. Because in Catholicism, you have, for example, the Jesuits, Franciscans, Salesians, and these are congregations that are approved by the Vatican, but they take years, sometimes 100 years. There's a process. You can't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to start a new movement. There has to be a process. However, the way that they showed off this movement was that they're already full on legit and it's all good. So for me and my family, it's like, okay, it's safe. But so I left. So that was the shocker, was that I left high school, but I was told by one of the priests that even though I'm going to leave high school, I was just about to turn 17. They told us that I would be able to do high school from their compound. And what happened? Did I do high school? No, I didn't do high school. I mean, it wasn't. They sell you one thing, and then they give you another thing.
Wow. And so you mentioned the word compound. So what does that mean? The group was moving around, but they had a central place where they all stayed, or what did that mean?
Well, they were a missionary group, and in Catholicism, for like a religious community, they need to get first permission of, let's say, especially when they're starting off, they need to get permission of a bishop. Now, a bishop is in charge of, let's say, a district. So for a religious community, they were established in Delaware, in the district of Wilmington, Delaware. So I'm trying to make this simple. The bishop there gave this upcoming religious group permission. So he's giving them permission to stay there, but that doesn't mean that they are full on validated by the church.
Okay.
At this point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a religious group, they also identified as a missionary group. So they would get permit. So they, like, let's say in LA, to go to LA, they would have to have permission. Like, a priest can't just go anywhere in the Catholic Church. If he doesn't go to another district belonging to another bishop, he has to get permission. What happened was they did have permission to visit Los Angeles, to stay in LA, but people were starting to complain. Later on, I only found out that parents were complaining because this order was recruiting members at a very young age. But of course, they don't tell us that. So anyways, so they were in LA and they traveled a lot, but our main place in the United States at that time was in Delaware. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many things happening.
Yeah. So you left high school, and they had told you, of course, that you could complete your schooling back in Delaware. And so were your parents going as well, or were you just going?
Oh no, so it's just me. It is the way it's set up is like a Catholic. It's when a person wants to become a priest or join a seminary or join a religious order, they leave their families and they join this group and they live out the rules of this movement or religious group, and they move on. But the family, my family, they were supportive. Hey, like, he's going to go study. Our son is going to get a good education. Maybe he'll be a priest one day. And so their concept, as well as mine, was that this was like any other group where there is a freedom to join a group. And if you want to leave, you can leave whenever you want, or you can join another group. But that's not how it was. It's just they made it appear that way, but it wasn't. Once you're in, it's like they give you this guilt and, of course, this doom and gloom that if you leave, your life is going to be pretty much forfeit.
Wow. So then what happened once you decided that you wanted to go and complete your education with them?
Well, I was excited. And my parents, of course, they found it very difficult because I wasn't the best student. But before I got recruited, I was starting to, I guess, wisen up, and I was taking my education more seriously. So I was really on fire to do something with my life. But then comes this new thought, this new idea that God is calling me now. And if I don't follow God's call now, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. So my parents took it very difficult. It wasn't easy for them, but I let them know that, hey, they're promising that I'll be able to get my education over there in Delaware, and things will be all right. I went to Delaware, and yes, we did start actually a homeschooling program with not with our group, but with another, I guess, a group that was well founded, that did have legit records, but I couldn't study. And the reason why was because I remember they were telling me, you can't read these books. Well, why not? Because it's hex. It's full of curses. So At this point in my life, in the story, I was scared. I was like, really? Oh man, all that's evil? Yeah, all that's evil. So then my mind at the age of 17, I'm thinking, wow, I'm glad I'm here, because if I were out there in the world, I would be reading all of this poison, all of this toxic. And it was just a regular freaking, like, I don't know, chemistry. I don't know.
Right.
It was just so insane.
Yeah.
But that's how they got me. And then after a year, they sent me to the Philippines, and that's a whole different story.
Oh, wow. Okay. So please continue. So you got to Delaware. They're preventing you from studying the normal schoolwork that you needed to actually be studying, telling you that supernatural things are involved, there's hexes and curses, and so you're not to study that. And being an impressionable and innocent, open-hearted young person who's trusting someone that you think the church has appointed, or who has been given some authority, you're trusting that person and the other adults with him. So you're really taking it to heart and thinking, wow, I'm glad then that I'm under the supervision of this person. Were they giving you other things to study or to do instead of schoolwork?
Well, we had to read, of course, the books written by the founder.
Ah.
Or I remember, because at that time, the group was also writing books under like the supervision of the founder. So we had to read those books. And from my understanding, because I mean, it's not a huge group. So I did speak to some of the other members, and they had told me that they would copy and paste some sections of other like religious books and filter it to fit, the vision of Father Bing. So my education was pretty much all filtered through Father Bing and the movement. Mm-hmm. However, I'm thinking at that time that I'm getting the best education, and my family's thinking, wow, we're happy for our son. He made this step and he's getting a good education, but it is a form of manipulation, brainwashing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, heavy indoctrination. And were they using cult tactics that we might be more familiar with, like any deprivation of sleep, or being made to chant or recite prayers or anything throughout the day? Was there any of that going on?
Well, I personally don't find chanting or praying to be culty per se, but it is the way that a group or movement adopts it. Because if someone wants to pray or chant, there were times when I experienced real true peace, and I still kind of miss that. Mm-hmm. However, now getting to the culty side is where, and it increased over time. Once you start, they kind of go easy. Yes. They give you that love bombing. Mm-hmm. But as you progress, now our sleep was being deprived. So we would sleep around at least, from like around 9 or 10 p.m., mostly like around 10 p.m. And we're expected to be awake by 12:45 to prepare for morning prayer. So we wake up at 12:45, and then we have to get our coffee or whatever, and then get up and be in the chapel at 1:30 in the morning. And you're expected to pray all the way until like 7 or 7:30 in the morning.
Wow.
So like I said, prayer, if someone wants to pray, go ahead. That's a person's ability to pray and connect or whatever. But this was just going against the human nature just so much.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're only getting 3 hours, not even 3 hours of sleep per night, and especially we know that teenagers actually require more sleep because all the growing that's going on in their body and their brain. So that is significant sleep deprivation.
But that's the cult tactic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The cult tactic is to deprive that. They deprive sleep. They deprive food. Mm-hmm. They deprive us from the ability to making choices. They will tell us, you have a choice. You can leave whenever you want, but God's going to curse you. So it is not a real they're not giving you the ability to choose freely. They're taking that away and introducing fear. And at that time, being pretty much just totally immersed in fear, there was no way for me to leave, because there is that voice in my head saying, hey, Ryan, you should maybe, this isn't what you signed up for. But then there's that other voice in my head, the voice of the cult that's saying, you're going to leave God, you're going to abandon the holy group. And so that's what cults do. They want you to no longer trust yourself, but to trust them entirely. And that's what I ended up doing.
Right. It's a tremendous amount of coercive control going on within a very high demand group. So yes, even though they say, well, there's the door, you can leave anytime, they are so busy filling your head with fear and judgment around what it could mean if you left. And I mean, not to mention also your brain hadn't even finished developing. So there wasn't necessarily the critical thinking skills that may have been available to you later on. You were just trusting. You were trusting, and your parents were trusting that these people would take care of you. So were there other young people? How many people were there? What were their ages? Were there people as young as 14 or what was it like? Were there girls and boys there?
Well, I was there for 11 years. So
Wow.
So there's a lot to cover, because there's different periods where there are waves, but later on, I remember we would have like every year, like not a retreat, but like a youth congress or something, or we'd have like a, what do you call those? I don't know, those big functions. And we're expected to, invite all these young adults. And we had it in Nebraska, we never had it in Delaware. We had it like in Nebraska, California, also in Australia, Philippines. So you have a lot of people who who were close to joining, then they left. But in the Philippines, I felt that it was just so much easier to just recruit, large volume of people, large numbers.
Because it is a Catholic nation by and large. Is that why?
No, I think it was easier because, sad to say, in the poverty that's there, there is this idea for some, not all, but I think there was an idea for some that it would be an escape of poverty. And
there's a desperation.
There's a desperation for some, of course, not all. However, also, I think it's easier to get away having like 40, 50 people living in a rink-a-dink house compared to like if you're in the United States or Canada, Australia, wherever. It's kind of hard to do that. But there it was, people sleeping on the floor, people sleeping on the corner, on the chair, wherever. And it was so we had our religious side for the males as well as for the females. However, earlier I mentioned the Alliance of the Holy Family. That's like the face where people think it's just a religious movement. They're Catholic. They're all good. And yes, they do get permissions from bishops. However, I know about the deception which happens. So maybe a bishop will give permission. Okay, they look like a okay group. They don't know what's happening because we're being told to be silent, to keep our mouth shut, to make the movement look good. So people who are getting involved like in the retreats with the Alliance of the Holy Family International, okay, now they go to the retreat, but what the founder, Father Bing, wants is that you join and you're not anymore just with the outside circle, but it's like a cult within the cult. So there have been changes, but a few years ago, the way it was structured was, you have that umbrella, Alliance of the Holy Family International. And then once you say, hey, I want to join, now there's 3 groups for the male. There are monks, there are people who take care of the media, and then you have the missionaries, those who pray with people and maybe they become priests. Also with the females, there are those who become nuns who just pray all day. Those who do the media, they do the recording, they do the mass production of the books, and then you have the missionaries who do the teaching for schools or daycare. But it was like a cult within the cult. So going back to your question earlier, how many were there in total? I can't really give an honest answer, but from what I've seen, because sometimes we would have like a joint prayer meeting, and maybe all in all, probably 1,500. Is that's the estimate? But so many left, so many came, so it's really hard to give a concrete number.
Right. And also because it was over all these countries. Like there were a lot of different nations, it sounds like, that the cult visited or sent people to. So that would be hard to keep track of everybody.
Well, it's really, and it still is kind of difficult for me to call it a cult, because there's that deception where they did get that permission to be a religious group, a religious movement. But once you're inside, there were some members who wanted that culty side, who wanted that grip of power. But then later on, and this is like right before I left, the Vatican started getting involved, because as I mentioned earlier, there has to be a process. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to make a group. There has to be a process. So what the Vatican did was start sending delegates to come and visit. So we had canon lawyers, we had bishops, psychiatrists, doctors to come and visit and interview the members. However, as this is happening, those who want to remain faithful to Father Bing, their battle cry is, oh, this is they're scrutinizing us because this is, the devil and blah, blah, blah. But what I saw was that there was another side where they just wanted to practice the religion. And that's what I wanted. You want to practice your faith. You want to study. You want to get a good education. You want to have that freedom to choose whether I want to stay, whether I want to leave. So it was really difficult. But in the end, Father Bing and one of those female groups, they left. Now they have a new group, and the other 5 groups, I guess, they're no longer, as far as I know, living that culty life. Now they're trying to, I guess, cleanse that and really live just a good lifestyle, and something that I respect in them, that they're pushing that aside, all of that coercion and all that bullshit out of the way.
So then, I'm curious also, in addition to some of the deprivation tactics that were used for sleep and food, were you aware of any abuse that was going on, either from Father Bing or from any other leaders? Because that often happens in culty type groups.
From Father Bing, he is a very private person. And he is, from what I have witnessed, he is socially awkward. I mean, he's a great speaker and everything, but his group of friends is very small, those whom he keeps near to him. And he always has like a bodyguard, and he always is like protected, or he have like a timer, because he doesn't want to be around people, because there's the idea like, hey, other priests, they have fallen into like impurity. I want to be safe. So, and I guess if people stay away from him, all the better, because I don't know how it would be if they're alone. But, I guess that's the one good thing that he does, is he doesn't really have contact with people. He always has like a bodyguard, or he's in his room, by himself praying, or he's reading and he's doing. So he's different. There's that charismatic side of him that's a speaker and powerful at, luring people into his message. And then there's that side where, once the music is over, once the lights are off, he's just like in seclusion. So abuse from him, I am not aware of. However, I'm aware that he knows of abuse that has happened, because I know that there have been some members who have been uh, abused, molested, and I don't know all the details, but I know that Father Bing had been aware, and he did nothing about it. And that's why I speak up, because I was never sexually molested or anything like that, but there was abuse that happened to me. I mean, getting beaten. I was in solitary confinement for at least a year.
Why? What had you done? Why would you be put in solitary confinement for a year?
So the reason why, I don't know, because the way they view obedience, because in religious groups in the Catholic Church, you have your vows: chastity, poverty, and obedience. And it's supposed to be a holy step. It's supposed to be, freely taken, and they're not supposed to abuse it. But then it's like, oh, you have obedience, so stay over there. And it wasn't like, okay, for like most of the time, like for the 9 months, I was in a chapel, but I'm being shunned. I'm not in contact with the community, so it's not totally solitary confinement. But then later on, and this is from Father Bing, he wanted me to be in the basement for 3 months, and that was an end times basement. I guess to prepare for, I don't know, for the nuclear bomb or whatever the hell, So it started becoming more insane.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was about 25, and I was no longer that 17-year-old.
Right.
But I also think that they didn't like that I was starting to, in a way, speak up or push back, because some of the stuff that they said was total bullshit. And now I have more reason, I have more wits, and I would just, voice my opinion. I think that's a bad idea. And then, next thing you know, I'm in the basement. So,
wow.
So that's how. So it's the abuse is. There's just so many different angles. Like I said, I know members who were sadly molested, and Father Bing didn't do anything to protect them or to punish that person. Only until later, when the Vatican started getting involved, that priest disappeared. It's like, connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when I joined, Father Bing introduced this thing called preventive system. He told us that, at least my batch of the members who joined, he told us, from now on, we're going to start this thing called preventive system. Because before y'all came, we had the repressive system where we would just punish. So just real quick, with the repressive system, from what I'm aware, from several testimonies that I've heard, the way they viewed obedience was, you have to surrender your judgment, your reason, and your will in order for obedience to be holy. However, with Father Bing, there is now the fourth degree, because going again with that cult mentality, there's always this extremism, wanting the absolute holiest, best. So this fourth degree is like, for example, they will say, Ryan, and they never did this to me, but just for example, hypothetically, Ryan, do you want to be a saint? Of course I want to be a saint. Of course I want to be a good person, virtuous and all that. Well, it's easy to say, but if you were to be martyred, would you be able to do it? Would you be able to give your life? I'm like, I'll try, I hope. Well, for preparation, we're going to do fourth degree of obedience. So fourth degree of obedience, talking about, also loaded language.
Mm-hmm.
For us, fourth degree was like a code for, sadly, some members, when they were told to do the fourth degree of obedience, that meant that they had to either eat their own feces, or, for what I'm aware, I've been told that there was this thing called benefactor. And I asked, well, what the hell is a benefactor? I've never done the fourth degree. It's like, a benefactor is when someone else gives you. their gift pretty much, and you have to eat it. And sad to say, I've had a few members tell me that they were told to do that every day during Lent for 40 days. And then the thing on top of that is that if you don't do it, it's a sin. So
that is so terrible. That's so sad to think of anybody's will being broken to that degree, and their mind being controlled to that degree that they would think they have to do something so unhealthy and so offensive in order to be holy. That is just a really sad, sad thing. And it does definitely speak to the level of control that Father Bing had over his followers, who, I mean, were good people, were earnest people, wanting to change the world for the better, wanting to leave a good mark, on the earth, helping others and so forth. And a charismatic leader who's often either narcissistic or mentally ill can really twist that, take those good, earnest desires people have and absolutely twist them. And it's just so important. Thank you for sharing that. That's not an easy thing to share about that went on in that group. That's really difficult. I'm curious what happened for you to make you finally decide, I don't want this anymore. This isn't right.
Well, there was so much that happened because I joined, and when I joined this group, I was fully on board because I wanted to do something good, and I felt that I lacked a lot of discipline. I was thinking, maybe this this way of life, this discipline, and they would discipline our eating habits. There were some pros to just having that different lifestyle, and I got to travel. But there were just too many cons. I mean, like the pros, like, one, you get to travel a little bit. Two, you get to be introduced to different eating patterns, probably more healthy. However, they made it an extreme, and so over the years, being there for 11, like I've said, I was just completely loyal. The way I look at younger Ryan, I was a trusting son. Mm-hmm. I was a trusting child, believing that I was being formed to maybe become a priest, or even not, if not a priest, just to be formed into a better person. But however, the way I see it, there was a lust for money. Money talks. Mm-hmm. And the way I mean, this is just my opinion, but I feel that maybe my parents didn't give enough. And so I stayed pretty much like on the sidelines the whole time. I mean, there were times when I'd be allowed to do some missionary work, but I felt that, how come I'm always getting punished? I'm obeying every freaking thing that y'all tell me to do. And I'm being put in maybe either isolation, or I'm getting like the shittiest responsibilities. I'm still doing it, but it was starting to not. It hadn't bothered me yet, but it was starting to add up like a little mountain.
So you thought that if your parents had given more money to the organization, you would have had more freedoms, or things would have gone differently for you? Is that what you are saying?
I think so, yes. Mm-hmm. And I say this because, number one, when I was in the isolation, there was a point where they needed a Spanish speaker. So they sent me, they got me out of there and sent me to Nebraska to help with the mission there to translate. And it was cool. I had fun. But then during my mission, my grandmother died. Mm-hmm. So, okay. And so the day I found out she died, I was flying from Nebraska back to Delaware. So I arrived in Delaware, and I asked to speak, not to Father Bing, because Father Bing is traveling the world, living his life. I asked to speak to the superior of that location, and his response was, I don't have time for you right now. Like, leave me alone. So I was able to speak with him the next day, and I blew up on him. I'm like, dude, like I've been busting my ass off. He's, hey, watch your language. Hey, man, no, man, I've been busting my ass off obeying the stupid thing of being stuck in isolation for all these months. I've been doing all this, and all I want to do was talk to you. I mean, you have the guts to travel the whole freaking world, but you can't talk to me? Like, what's up, man? And I'm actually kind of surprised that I had the courage, but it was just so much had happened mentally, but I still wasn't there. I still wasn't at the point to say that this place is a cult. So I told him, look, this is what happened. My grandmother died. I haven't seen my family. I've obeyed all of your stupid things. I'm stuck here. And the rest of the brothers and sisters, I see they're going back to Cali. They're going back to visit their families wherever they are. I'm not jealous, but it's like, hey, like, what's up, man? Like, how come they get to go and I'm stuck here? And I'm the one like obeying. And he tells me, you know what? I'm going to talk to your family and we're going to arrange something. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Okay, fine. It calmed me down. But then tomorrow came and I speak with this priest and he tells me, sorry, I spoke with your family and they're saying, oh, we can't afford for Ryan to come to the funeral. It's just too expensive. We're burying grandma and what we want is for Ryan to just stay there and to pray. And I asked him, well, is that what they said? He's like, yeah. Okay. So I have to submit and, with that line of thinking, surrendering my judgment, my reason, and my will, I'm just surrendering. What he didn't know was that my brother was going to come visit about 5 months later. So my brother came like around November, December. And at that point, I'm with another priest who is more open. And to this day, he's pushed away that culty side. Anyways, so my brother asked Father Philip, hey, is it okay if I take out Ryan and maybe some of the brothers to IHOP? And this priest, absolutely, go ahead, have a fun time, have a blast. So I'm there at IHOP with my brother and some of the other members. And my brother asked me, hey, how come you didn't go to grandma's funeral? And I'm looking at him and I'm like, what kind of question is that? Father Jose said that you and the family didn't want me to be there. And my brother told me that's not what happened. I asked my brother, well, what happened? And he told me that Father Jose called saying that I was busy doing a mission and that it wasn't possible for me to travel for grandma's funeral. And so my brother asked me, what really happened? Were you on mission? And I said, no, I was stuck in the basement. so that should have opened my eyes, but it did. I asked to leave, and instead of allowing me to leave, they gave me tickets to go to the Philippines. And in the Philippines, I had a mixture of ups and downs, but then I had a superior who I felt was jealous and had me beaten. And that was kind of like, I know I'm like skipping a lot, but after getting beaten for nothing, I mean, I've been used to getting beatings. We get whipped, and I'd be used to it because the idea is, if you make violations or if you're late for prayer, if you're late for rising, maybe it'll be like no breakfast, fasting for an extra day, or maybe you'll get some whippings. But I remember I got whipped for nothing, really for nothing, for some bullshit reason. And I stood up to him like, why the hell are you going to beat me for? I haven't done anything. And the response was, you got to do it if you want to be a member. And, for those who are involved in cults, getting kicked out for some, I mean, I know there are those cult members who are just more than happy to get the hell out of there. But I saw this as my family. I saw this as, I left my biological family to be with them. And so when I got beat that one time, that last time, that's when I guess I pretty much, in their eyes, I broke bad. I became a bad person because after that, I was like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, getting punished, very physically punished, abused, whipped, beaten, pardon me, for infractions. I mean, you make the point that this time there was no reason for you to get beaten. I hope you realize that also it's unacceptable to hurt another person because they sleep in or because they do anything wrong. That's just not what we do.
Absolutely. It just, however, I think over the time that it was like a numbing, it doesn't hurt so much when, okay, there's a reason. Okay. And it was more acceptable for me to get through it. It was
they normalize it.
And it makes it easier to cope with. But then just after so much, being shunned for a year, just imagine just being given the silent treatment for like a day by people whom you feel that you love. And that sucks. Now just imagine it just a little bit longer. There were times when I was thinking, I'd rather be in a POW because at least I'm being shunned by people who I don't care about.
Right.
But here it's like these are the people whom I love. And the sad thing is that some of those who were, I guess, like shunning me, they didn't want to. Right. But their obedience is to do it. So I have no ill will. I have no hatred towards them. But I want to use my voice so that people can start thinking critically that even though a person is dressed as a priest or a nun, but they're telling you or the congregation or the group to do anything out of charity, that's not what it's supposed to be about.
Yes, you're right. And the breaking down of a person's integrity doesn't happen overnight. It's little things along the way that do it. And then of course there can be a group mentality as well. Oh, well, it's happening to that person and nobody's speaking up or saying anything, so it must be okay. And that's something finally happened to you, that one beating that you did not in any way deserve, and you couldn't even make it make sense. You saw that the superior was jealous of you, and that's what was motivating some of the abuse. And that somehow snapped you back to reality to remind you of who you are and what you're about and what's okay and what's not okay. Does that sound accurate?
Most of it until you reach to reality, because I didn't know what reality was. So for me now it's like, although my mind is kind of in and physically I'm in, my soul, my heart was just defeated. And but the thing is that I have no education. I mean, even though I did take philosophy there in the Philippines, and and another thing, because in the Catholic Church, there are universities in Rome and Washington, D.C., which are great, universities, sort of, I guess, but at least they're legit. What happened was, on a previous mission before I even joined, some members were sent to Rome to study at a real university. And I actually was speaking to one of these ex-members, and he told me that, they got a legit education. And then they started asking Father Bing, like, hey, how come, you're mentioning this about punishment and, all these things, but it doesn't seem to really align with some, not only faith, but it doesn't also align with reason. So there has to be that balance. Like, what's going on? And so Father Bing, he after that, and I remember Father Bing mentioning, he said that one of my biggest mistakes was sending members to Rome, because then they got hexed, they got infested by demons, and now they got brainwashed by liberal theology or whatever theology. And now they started questioning me, and they started doing like an uprising. And I mentioned that to that person who I was talking to, and he's like, "No, that's baloney. It's not no uprising. They're just asking critical thinking questions."
That's right.
And then he just blew his top. And then so the result of that was him shutting down members getting legit education. And now it gets, even more culty where they are in control of the education. So for me to leave and talking about reality, I don't know what the hell to look forward to, because I didn't have any education. I left everything. I've been there for over a decade.
And your family thought that it was a good thing, except maybe when your brother discovered that, there was a lie that one of the priests had told, where he told the family you were on a mission, and he told you that the family didn't want you to go home. But other than that, they thought things were A-okay with you being in the group.
Well, I think they started kind of wondering what was going on, but just seeing Father Bing as like a martyr, the way how he shows himself, it's kind of hard. And especially when information is being filtered by them. So earlier you asked if I felt that if my family had given more money, if I would be treated differently. Well, I'll give you really quickly another example.
Sure.
With my that same brother. And I love him. That's my bro. He told me, he called me in the Philippines, and at that time, at this point of the story, I'm with the good group, the good side of the group. And he's like, "Hey, look, I'm calling you because I spoke to Father Bing personally, because I'm going to get married, and I want you to be there. And what happened with Grandma's funeral, I don't want that stupidity to happen again." So I went straight to the guy in charge, and I asked him, "Hey, can you do something for Ryan to come to the wedding?" And Father Bing said yes, under condition that he brings another companion with him, that he's not alone. And so my brother said, "Sure, no problem." So it was me and one of my best friends from Cali also. So it was great. So we go there, and I was given a cell phone by the community, so it's all good. I'm there a few days before the wedding, and maybe 2 days before the wedding happens, I get text messages from the nuns, those who are still with Father Bing to this day, saying that I'm disobedient, that Father Bing is disappointed in me, that Father Bing never gave this permission, that I'm disobedient, and that now my obedience is to leave and to go back to America, go back to the Philippines, not attend the wedding. And I'm thinking, and then they also mentioned, because no one has that privilege. Once you join, you don't have that privilege.
Wow.
And I'm reading this, and I'm in my mind, I'm thinking of all the times I would go on airport runs to drop off brothers or sisters, and they would go and visit their families in whatever country or state. And I'm thinking, well, why the hell? So I was just so conflicted. But again, it really had to come to me getting beaten to really open my eyes that this just wasn't.
Did you leave and not attend the wedding? Did you go back to the Philippines?
I spoke to my brother. I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm not going to go to my mom and say, "Hey, buy me a ticket to go back to." It's over 1,000. I mean, just the even if you buy it in advance, a ticket is hella expensive.
Yeah.
Imagine buying like right then and there, saying, "Hey, I want to get a ticket." It's going to be probably at least $2,000 or $3,000. And so
you stayed for the wedding.
I stayed. I said, what the hell? I mean, what the hell am I going to do? I mean,
right. And how close was that till you actually left the group, or how far was that?
So after that wedding, I went back to the Philippines, and like I said, I was with a good side of the group. But the superior at that time, he told me, like, "Look, like, I got in trouble because I allowed you to go." And so he got punished too. So it's like a ripple effect. They just want everyone to get punished. And then I felt, oh, am I the one to blame? Like it always comes back to me. So after that, maybe a few months later, that superior got transferred somewhere else. And then I'm with this new superior who I felt was jealous, maybe because I was able to connect with people. And then later on came the beatings, and I said, the hell with this. I didn't leave right away because it's just so hard. I mean, not knowing what's out there, I was stuck in the mountains, stuck in the basement, end times, war is going to happen anytime. The end is going to be near. So it was really hard for me to grasp what my reality was. So if I ask, hey, I want to leave, all they're going to do is say, hey, pray about it, pray for another year, and it's going to be another cycle. So what I ended up doing was I ended up kind of like, I don't want to say escape, but, going out, and I got a girlfriend, and that was, for me to leave, I had to make myself appear as dirty as possible because there was no other way. And it hurt me because, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, having a relationship, being with someone. But when you're doing it by force to kind of like escape something, and I'm not totally I'm confused because I don't want to be there, but they're telling me I have to be there. So it was just, and then I want to be with this woman, but then I don't want to be with this woman. It was just so unfair to her also.
Right. Very confusing, conflicting emotions. Everything that you've shared so far, it does make me consider Dr. Steve Hassan's BITE model. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Yeah. And Dr. Hassan looks at the BITE as behavior, information, thoughts, and emotion. And culty type of groups and persons are going to try and control and manage those things. They're going to try and control your behavior, not letting you go by yourself anywhere. They're going to control the information, not letting you study information that might be critical of the group, behavior of your thoughts and your emotion, trying to control all those things, trying to control those. And it sounds like, we could tick off the box for each one of those. And I am so glad that you got out. It's to your credit that even under that immense mental pressure, you could figure out a way how to get out, and such that they wouldn't try and bring you back or force you to go back. And so how long have you been out now?
So I left in 2015. And the thing is that, like, as I was leaving, like I said, the Vatican is getting involved. And with the Vatican, one of the first things the Vatican did was, okay, we're not going to do any more sleep deprivation. Members can start sleeping normally. If someone wants to leave, go ahead. They can leave freely. So I see this battle going on with someone wanting that culty side, and then other members were like, no, the church is saying, I mean, it's supposed to be free, like, let's chill out. And so the way I wanted to leave was like, look, my time is done. You guys have been forcing me to stay here, but I've opened my eyes and it's time for me to go. But the superior who I spoke to was still very culty, and he still is. And it's like, no, you need to stay with us. And I said, dude, I got a chick, all right? I slept with someone. And I hated saying that because I didn't want that to be the way I left. I wanted it to be I wanted to be more gracious. I've done my time. I tried it out. It's not for me.
Right.
And the way it should be is, all right, go ahead, move on. It's fine. But they didn't allow that. So I left in 2015, but I think mentally I left maybe around 2019.
Okay.
So it's really, or maybe 2020. I don't know.
Sure.
It took a while.
Because it does take us a while then to reintegrate into secular life. So we can even get a job and be going through the motions and stuff, but we've got so much to unpack mentally and emotionally around what happened, what just happened to us. Our life got hijacked for however many years, and there's a lot of feelings around that. And then also comes the important part of educating ourselves so that we don't fall into fundamentalism again or extremism again. And even as you were just discussing that, well, some people, we need to chill out, but other people were still very attracted to this strict discipline type modality. And of course, that makes us feel special. That's what makes us holy and set apart, is that we can endure all these things. We have the secret sauce, nobody else has it. But that if you look at every single fundamentalist group and extremist group and cult, they follow similar patterns. And so we can learn about those things and take care moving forward that we don't fall into such extreme patterns again. And now you've been out for all this time, physically and mentally out, and you've started a podcast and a YouTube channel. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I started the podcast just as I just said, fuck it. I'm going to do something. I don't know what to do with my life. Really, I don't know what to do. I mean, I didn't know what to do. So I just, decided to do first the podcast. But then I did some whatever episodes. But inside, I felt like, dude, tell your story. And so I decided telling my story. And then, I developed the Twitter account and then started connecting and then started getting more education and, more books. And that started putting me on a different journey. And then I ended up developing the Truth That Heals podcast, where it really started off as me, messing around, kind of like daring myself. And then it developed into me sharing my story. And sometimes I still do share episodes of, what I'm going through, because the healing journey isn't just reading a book and you're good to go. I mean, like the bite models, we can read it so many times, but that doesn't mean it's, all that we've been through has been fleshed out. But now we have the tools, or we have the understanding, and we're able to process it. So I share a bit about my journey, but I also want the podcast, the YouTube to, reflect my life, my personal healing journey. But I also want it to be a platform where other survivors, or not just survivors, but people who have, been through hard knocks in life, can share their truth, how they're able to persevere, or, hold on to hope, or how they were able to climb some kind of a mountain. Because whether you're religious or not, all of us have feelings of despair. And I just want this to be a platform where, I want to show the despair. I want to show the mountain, but I also want to show what other people have gone through to climb that mountain. And maybe, for some listeners, it'll be eye-opening, or maybe they'll learn something. Oh, wow. One of the guests spoke about depression. How did he or she get through that? Oh, they started doing art, or they started doing stand-up comedy, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's what I want my platform to be. And it's still developing. Nice. It's been a lot of hard work, but that is what I offer. And anyone wants to, listen, they're always welcome to check it out.
Wonderful. And that's the Truth That Heals podcast. And how can people find you on Twitter?
My Twitter, well, I think it's the Truth That I'll give it to you in the show notes, but I think it's Truth That Heals Pod or Truth That Heals Podcast.
Okay.
It should be something like that.
All right. So, and you feel now fairly grounded in your new life, the life that you're building for yourself, and the kind of the activism work that you're doing in the hopes of helping other people who've also been through very difficult circumstances.
Yes, I feel that I've seen so much darkness, and it was presented as light, presented as good.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that, after seeing so much and experiencing, I do not want to be bitter or to be hateful.
Mm-hmm.
And I want my life to be an example to others that although you've been through so much shit, I mean, it is possible. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I just want to be an example that it is possible to overcome those hateful feelings, emotions, not necessarily by love, but, just moving on with life and doing something positive. So I'm trying to use my life to be positive. It's hard,
Nice.
but I'm
Yeah.
giving my best.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you reached out to me to share your story, because I had never even heard of the group that you were involved in. And it certainly does sound extreme, and elements of it do sound culty, that's for sure. So people can look in the show notes, and we'll have some more information how they might be able to find you, or your YouTube channel, your podcast, find you on Twitter. And so I want to thank you for telling your story with us today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, good. And thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. I will have all sorts of information in the show notes for today's episode, the BITE model, and maybe links for some cult experts who also can be very helpful. And of course, you can come to my website, divorcing-religion.com. I work one-on-one with clients recovering from religious trauma and coercive control. And thanks again for joining us. Take care, everyone.